And there we are. Okay, thank you for your patience with us. Welcome again to the North Carolina Arts Council Literature Fellowships webinar. And again, I'll remind you that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing at a later time. So if you want to just sit back and enjoy it without taking notes, or if you have to jump off early, you'll be able to review what we've talked about today. I want to remind you, as we try to advance here, hold on one second, that fellowships are awards of merit to individual artists to recognize excellence, and also that the fellowships are intended to support the creative development of North Carolina artists and support the creation of new work. So what we're going to do today, we're not really going to walk through the actual process of filling out the application form. We think our new Go system is very user-friendly, and the online materials are very clear, but even so, you may run into technical problems, and we invite you to contact us individually, and we'll remind you of how to do that at the end of today's presentation. But today we're going to talk about tips on making your application compelling and competitive. And we're going to do that in two ways. The first half will be about making your narrative shine, and the narrative are those 3 questions in your application. And then we'll quickly go through some common mistakes to avoid, and I think you probably already know what those are, but we're going to tell you again. So let's begin with making your narrative shine. And again, this has to do with those 3 questions. How do you plan to use the fellowship? How will receiving a fellowship impact your artistic development? And why is it important that you receive a fellowship at this point in your artistic career? And those are all contained within the application itself. Before we go on much further, I want to just talk about 2 words that you're going to hear about 1,000,000 times today, and those words are compelling and competitive. And give you the definitions. Compelling means evoking interest, attention, or admiration in a powerfully irresistible way. And inspiring conviction, conviction in you as a writer and conviction in your work. And then competitive is having a strong desire to succeed and being well suited to compete, and hopefully some of the tips you get today will help you to really craft your application so that you are better suited to compete, because this is a very competitive process. So let's start looking at question 1. How do you plan to use the fellowship? And I'm going to give you just some examples of answers that are good and less good. So let's start off with 1. I would use the fellowship to write 1 or 2 new plays. And occasionally we get 1-sentence or 2-sentence answers. And this one, you know, it's not a great answer because it's not compelling. And the reason it's not compelling is because you haven't given us enough information. We need to know, tell us about the plays. Use all the space provided. Give details about what you're actually going to do, because you're not really answering the question here. You're not telling us what the plays are about and why they're important to you, or how they further work that you've already begun. So feel free to add more than just a sentence or 2 and really explain exactly what it is you're planning on doing. And here's another example. I just finished writing my first short story. The fellowship will help me write my second one. Well, that's fine. Again, that's an okay use of the fellowship. This one is not good because it's not really competitive. You've written 1 story, and you want to write a second one, but you haven't really told us anything about either one. So you have lots of space to use. Tell us about your first short story and how the second one will build on that, or why those stories are important to you or important to the larger writing world, or why they're important to talk about at this point in time. So again, give us more information. Use all of that space. I would like to reduce my work hours so I have more time to work on my current book or poetry collection or screenplay or play. The project centers on ... Now this is a great answer because making time to write is an acceptable use of the fellowship, but you can't just say what I just said. You have to, even so, you have to fill it out with more information. Tell us about your current book. Tell us what the focus is. Tell us how much you plan to write. Maybe you're trying to finish a draft, or maybe you're trying to get halfway through a draft. But making time to write is definitely an acceptable use of the fellowship. I would like to reduce yes, there's the second line. Be sure to include compelling details. Here's another one. I would like to apply for the following writers' workshops or residencies so I can develop my current writing project, which is about ... And yes, that is an acceptable use of the fellowship. Again, going to writers' workshops or residencies are perfectly fine. But again, be sure to include specifics about your work. You do have to apply to things like residencies. You may not be able to get into a workshop because it's full, but that doesn't prevent you from telling us what you have in mind. Tell us if you want to go to a residency location. Tell us why that would be helpful to you, who will be there, if there's a workshop, who's going to be teaching the workshop, and why that would apply to what you're doing. So again, give us dates, give us ideas. Even if you can't follow through with all of them, at least you're giving us a sense that you're serious about what you're pursuing. I have 2 young children, and the fellowship would buy me X hours of childcare so I can focus on finishing my current novel, which concerns ... Yes, childcare while writing is an acceptable use of the fellowship. You can't tell us that you have 2 really noisy brats, and if only they would be quiet, you could think lofty thoughts about what your next writing project might be. You do have to give us specifics. So if you do have childcare, tell us again what it is you're working on. Describe your project, describe where you're at in your project, how far you'd like to get, how many pages you'd like to write, et cetera, et cetera. Just be sure to give us compelling details while you work and get that childcare. That is an acceptable use of your fellowship. I will purchase a laptop computer, create a space in my home exclusively for writing, and travel to the site of my current novel to gather historical facts. Again, all of those things are acceptable uses of the fellowship. You don't have to give us the specifics of your laptop computer, but you can talk about, maybe tell us a little bit about the space in your home that you want to sort of set aside for writing. And certainly if you're going to travel somewhere, you definitely want to describe your writing work and project. Tell us where you're going. Tell us what you'll do when you get there, how long you'll stay there, who you'll talk to, what are the historical facts that you want to gather. Be very specific, and the more specifics you can give us, the more serious it will seem that you've really thought through this project and you're not just asking us for money to take a nice trip, but you actually have plans of what you're going to do when you get there, and those plans are going to play an important role in completing your work. So let's move on to question 2. How will receiving a fellowship impact your artistic development? I've been writing my novel for 3 years, and it's time to unveil it to the world. With this fellowship, I will blow the minds of the publishing industry. Well, probably not. If you have never shown your work to another single human being, if you've never gotten any sort of feedback or done any sort of editing on your project, you're probably not being realistic about where you are in your development as a writer. And it's really important that you focus on your writing practice and your path forward. Instead of telling us what an amazing writer you are, tell us a little bit about your project and tell us what it's about. Tell us how you've gotten feedback on it and how you've improved it and how the fellowship will help you do that. And our next slide will give you an example of how that might work. I'm on the 3rd revision of my current book manuscript, which has received positive feedback from my writers group, as well as 2 small writing grants. I would like to use the fellowship to pay for professional editorial guidance in shaping the book for publication. This is a great answer because it tells us that you are serious about your writing. You've gotten a lot of feedback on it. You've revised it several times. It's good enough that it's received a little bit of support through writing grants, and you're humble, and you're now submitting it for even more professional guidance as you try to polish it. So this tells us that you're a really serious writer and that you're going to use the fellowship in a good way, and it's money well spent. This prestigious fellowship will give me credibility as a working poet and the opportunity to attend conferences and remain active in the poetry community. This is another good use of the fellowship, but again, you can't just say that. You have to give us specifics about your plans, how the money will help you remain engaged, what conferences you will attend, and give us specifics about what you're going to be doing. Don't just say this, but elaborate on it and tell us how you plan to remain active in the poetry community and how the fellowship will help you. A successful production of my play will contribute to my development towards greater visibility and self-sufficiency as a working artist. Yes, this is a good answer, but again, and I'll just keep saying this over and over again, tell us more details about how this is actually going to happen. How will you produce the play? Where will you produce the play? And how is it going to develop your greater visibility and self-sufficiency as a working artist? Who will you invite to the play? How will you publicize it, etc.? I had years to write my first book, but its success has put pressure on me to write a second one, and I have much less time. The fellowship will keep my professional momentum going. Yes, again, time to write is a good use of the fellowship, but tell us a little bit more about how you will keep your professional momentum going and what you're doing. Let's move on to question 3. Why is it important that you receive a fellowship at this point in your artistic career? I'm about to turn 50. This is really my last chance to get my writing career going. Otherwise, I'm going to have to find another job. Well, this is not a great approach to take. You and probably a lot of other people have been trying to get your writing career going for a long time. Better to focus on your writing practice and your path forward. Tell us what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's important to you, rather than focusing on the negative. Try to be a little bit more positive and give us some more details about your path forward for your writing. After years of writing in one style, I would like to take an entirely different approach to my writing. The fellowship will give me the freedom to try. This is a great reason. Provide compelling details about the new direction you're taking. Tell us what you used to write like and why you're trying to change your direction, why it's important for you to do that at this point in your artistic career. And again, just give us lots more details of why it's important to you. After publishing short poems in many journals, my goal is to focus on full-length works, polish them, and publish a full-length book of poetry. This is a good use of the fellowship, and again, once again, give us details about your work. Tell us a little bit about your short poems, what you hope to accomplish with your longer works, how you might polish them, who you would show them to, how you would get feedback on them, and so on. I've had a successful career as a sculptor, and I've always wanted to turn my creative energies toward writing. Now that my kids are grown, it's the perfect time in my life to do so. No, your artistic career has not centered on writing, so it may be a perfect time in your life to do so, but maybe you want to wait a couple of years and actually do some writing and maybe apply for the next go-round of the fellowships, because you haven't really been a writer in your artistic career, although I'm sure you are very artistic. And why, by the way, why did you send us those pictures of coffee mugs? Because we're not going to look at them. I will use the fellowship to revamp my writing website, publicize my latest work in progress, and arrange readings of my work to generate and learn from public feedback. This is a great answer. You are allowed to use the fellowship for things like a website as it relates to your work. But again, it shows that you're interested in getting feedback and making your work better, and those are all really, really great things. So I like this answer a lot. After receiving positive feedback on my latest play manuscript, it's critical that I submit it to festivals in order to boost my visibility as a playwright. This is, again, a good answer, and as we talked about earlier with the poet, tell us about the festivals that you might be applying it to. Why are they places that would be good for your work to evolve and grow, and how they will boost your visibility? Give us those details. Don't just say this, but tell us more. After years of teaching screenplay writing, I have recently left my job to pursue my own writing full-time. The fellowship would allow me to focus on the development of my current screenplay. It's about ... Again, this is a good use of the fellowship, but don't just say that. Tell us more about your current screenplay. Tell us why it's important to you. Tell us why the topic is engrossing and wonderful, and give us more details than just this one sentence. All right, so let's move on to section 2, some common mistakes to avoid. I hate to have to say this, but I do have to say it. Typos. You guys are all writers, and there's no excuse for typos in the age of spell check, but we do see them in work samples and applications sometimes. You're a writer, and words are your tools. If you were a music composer and you were submitting a musical score for a fellowship and you had a couple of the notes wrong, that would reflect very badly on you. But in the same way, you're a writer, words are your tools, so you've got to be really, really careful of how you use them. Another thing we see once in a while is wrong word usage, not caught by spell check, things like roll instead of roll. Really the only way to deal with these things is to get another set of eyes on your documents, have somebody read them, have your friend or your spouse read them, and let them give you feedback. If they don't understand what you're saying, it might be a good time to revise what you've written, and if they notice a word that you haven't noticed because you've read your application a million times, they can let you know. Other common mistakes are how things play on the page, and that includes line spacing, margins, font size. Read the guidelines. We have really, really clear guidelines this year on our website, so read them, and you should be able to get all of your questions answered. Other common mistakes are formatting. I'm looking at you, playwrights and screenwriters. See the guidelines for software options. Some of them are free, but if you send us a 120-page single-spaced play manuscript that reads from margin to margin, that is not an acceptable work sample, and it's going to make a very bad impression on the judges if they see that. Some other common mistakes are submitting too much material. Don't send us an entire play or screenplay or book. Don't send multiple work samples and expect us to choose one. Don't send reviews, articles, or letters of recommendation because we don't ask for those and we're not going to read them. Only writing will be judged, not visual art. And I mention this because once in a while we get a children's book author who will send us galleys of a children's book that include colorful pictures and text in a very whimsical way, and we don't really have judges who are going to judge visual art. That's not part of the process. And it's also hard to tell how much copy you've submitted if it's not in the boring, correct format. So don't send us visual art. Common mistakes can include submitting too little. Poets must submit 10 pages of poetry, either 10 short poems or 10 pages of a longer poem, or a mixture of both. If you only send us 2 poems, we're going to wonder why you just sent us 2 poems. Maybe you only have 2 poems, or maybe your other 8 poems suck and you don't want us to see them. So please submit everything we ask you to submit, and that would include 10 pages of poetry. Other genres, a total of 20 to 30 pages, and you must submit cover sheets per the guidelines. Again, you can see them on our website. And then finally, the wrong resume. Prioritize your writing experience. If you have a job in a pet store so that you can write at night, or you can take a writing class at night, don't put your pet store experience as the first thing on your resume because you were always taught that you have to put your most recent employment at the top. Somehow find a way to think creatively about customizing your resume. So the first things we see that the panelists see on the resume have to do with writing or classes you've taken or things you've written or awards you've gotten and so on. So in summary, follow the guidelines that are on our website. Answer the questions. You can provide a one-sentence answer, but that's not really enough. You've really got to give us more and tell us how you're really answering the question. Use all of the space given for answers. Focus on your writing. Focus on your writing practice and your path forward, what you plan to do and how to move your career forward. Include as many specifics as possible. Submit your strongest work from the past 3 years, even if it's not the specific thing that you're applying for a fellowship. Give us your strongest work sample so we can see what kind of a writer you are. Apply your writing skills to your application. Make it compelling and competitive. You know, if you send us a really boring application, it's not going to say a whole lot about your ability to engage us as a writer. So make your application as compelling and competitive as your work. And good luck. If you follow all of these rules, it doesn't guarantee that you'll get a fellowship, but hopefully you'll get a little bit closer to being competitive in that process. If you do hit a technical snag in your application or have questions not addressed in the guidelines or in this webinar, please contact program staff, including me, David Patorti, or if you have general or technical questions, contact Amy Hoppe at these places. And I guess we can move on to maybe looking at a few questions. And we will get to those momentarily.